Take a network break. Our AI chatbots cranking out virtual donuts faster than you can say, is this a tech bubble? We'll cover product announcements from Extreme Networks, Gluware, Cisco, HPE, and others, check in on Nvidia's DPUs, and discuss Dell's new employee attendance monitoring and more. We're sponsored today by iTential. You can improve your network automation from one-off scripts that only you can use to safe, robust automations you can share with your entire IT organization. Find out more at itential.com/packetpushers. If you're looking for an easy way to keep up with everything Packet Pushers produces, we have a free newsletter. It's called Packet Capture. It's a once-a-week mailing. It includes everything we produce that week, including all of our podcasts, blogs, YouTube content. You can sign up for it for free at packetpushers.net/newsletters. Before we get into the news, we have some FU, some follow-up. Last week, Greg, you and I talked about the potential of AI-enabled hardware finding its way into firewalls and other security devices, and someone followed up to say, yeah, it's coming.
Yeah, they're highlighting a company called Silicon.USA or Silicon. They are providing what they call edge AI solutions here. So they're not firewalls quite the way I think of them. When I sort of dug at them, it looked like it's an AI analytics product. It's powered at the edge. And because it's going to be doing some stuff at the edge and it's got AI processing or edge AI, you can get into the flow and see what's going on there. But doesn't appear to be an AI firewall product in the way that I thought, like if you're sending queries off to an offsite AI, like if you're sending queries to ChatGPT, then that's normally embedded inside of a HTTPS or a TLS session, and it's encrypted. So you need to break into that and then log all of those requests that people make to ChatGPT. That's one way of looking at it. That's a user-centric AI firewall. There's also another way of doing it, which is where you put a firewall in front of an AI at the other end. So if you've got an AI engine that you've developed, you put a firewall in front of that, and it filters the queries that are coming from the AI back to the user. So there's two sides to this. One is, user-centric, and the other one, like everything in AI, it's, at the other end, if you're presenting an AI point. And you don't want the AI to suddenly start, popping out racist or sexist content or start just teaching people how to make their own TNT or other undesirable things. Or if you've got a chatbot that's supposed to help people query their bank balance, you don't want to asking for emotional support advice or how to handle suicide, right? That sort of stuff.
Yes.
So the challenge here is, what is an AI firewall? And the spectrum here is large. But I think my point that I was trying to get at last week was I'm expecting to see firewalls actually get XPUs, which is, TPU, GPU, whatever it's going to be called. That's actually going to be doing the AI processing. And this box is that. So it does have a hardware accelerated edge. But I would also draw your attention to the fact that every iPhone has the same thing. So every iPhone in the last 3 or 4 years actually has an AI/ML/augmented reality processor, which is in the same sort of level, right? Able to do natural language processing or, and so the break here is that inference is done at the edge. Generative AI is created in a core. How you access that AI, what your use case is, varies. So it's a useful point to say that there's actually different types of AI firewalls. And that's what I took away from this discussion. I finally realized I'm sort of framing up what the market looks like there.
Yeah. Sticking sort of with that theme, a second FU, someone wrote in to say, it's probably too early to think about this, but start contemplating a dedicated channel for AI stuff. Reflecting back on this week's network break, there's a lot of AI content in there. Not complaining at all, but actually wondering if a future channel could be created to have all things AI. Call it the Unicorn Channel. That's a good one.
Well, he's going to be disappointed this week because there's a lot of AI content.
Trigger warning.
Trigger warning. Don't take a shot every time you hear AI. Oh, this is not going to go well for you. So my view here is that it remains up until this point, and I've looked around and I continue to read and research. AI is an accessory. It gets added to something that already exists. So, today we've got Cisco adding AI to AppDynamics, Gluware adding AI to its software, Extreme is adding AI, HPE Aruba Networking is adding AI to its SASE portfolio. Right? And that's just this week. What you're not seeing is, here, come and buy my AI. AI is not a thing in its own right that I've yet to see. Now, of course, that's not true if you are ChatGPT or Facebook, right, who are the people who are generating the generative AI LLMs with vast amounts of data and, so on and so forth. That is not, but for most people, and the sort of people that this show is targeting towards, your AI is going to come in the form of I consume AI from somewhere else. I'm going to be having an inference engine in my laptop, in my smartphone. And I'm going to be talking off somewhere out there. There's an LLM or some generative AI system that I'm going to query. Or maybe if I'm very lucky, I'll have a model which comes down to my edge device, which then runs locally, which is how, smartphones and a lot of PCs are headed in that direction, where Intel and AMD are putting the inferencing engines into the CPU, for example. The iPad announcement from Apple this week was in point. So what we're seeing it turn into is that AI is being used by the vendors to put content in their manuals, their tech support documentation, their 20 years of TAC cases, and they're using AI to analyze that, or to analyze logs for events, or searching configurations for errors. Like if you've got a 500 router network and you need to make sure that your access lists all match up, AI can detect that much more easily than anything we've ever had before. So if we were to create a podcast about AI, it just wouldn't be relevant. Like, do you agree?
I mean, I guess I see, there's different ways to come at AI. There's, AI as part of a product that I don't think a whole channel could be useful about, but AI as a discipline, as a science could be useful, because I feel like, particularly for me, we get so much press releases and vendor conversations that talk about AI, and not being a data scientist, I would guess I'd feel like I'd benefit for some grounding in the space itself to have a better sense of when someone's trying to snow me or not. But yes, I think a channel dedicated to AI announcements would not be great.
No, it wouldn't be. I think the flip side here is, if you look at it from this point of view, everybody uses silicon inside of their computers and their routers and their switches, but we don't have a dedicated channel to silicon. It's not big enough in its own right to justify that. And you don't have to understand how the silicon is made or how it works or the design features to be able to consume the silicon. Does that make sense?
Yes.
There are some people who need to know that a Juniper Trio 5 chipset has this capability, and has this depth of VOQ around the input bus of the ASIC, and that sort of stuff. How much HBM3 memory you can get in there, and blah, blah, blah. There are people who need to know that and do know that, but in general, having a discussion around that is it's not a viable sort of a technology to cover in and of itself. So there's a balance to be struck. But I appreciate it. There's still plenty of AI in this week's show, so you're not missing out.
That's right. All right, our last FU for the day. We also talked about last week AWS and VMware and Broadcom. They're sorting out how you're going to be able to access VMware Cloud on AWS infrastructure. And Greg, I guess you just wanted to clarify something.
Yeah, I made a big mistake there. I said that customers pay AWS for the AWS resources they consume, but they don't. They pay VMware. So when you buy VMware Cloud on AWS, you deal entirely with VMware.
I see.
And what used to happen is that AWS was a reseller, and you could buy VMware Cloud on AWS, so you would get your bill from AWS, right? VMware and the margin would go to AWS just like any reseller. As a result of the changes to the reseller program, AWS hasn't signed on to become a reseller of VMware, shall we say. You could take that from either angle that you want to come at it. Either VMware didn't want AWS to be there, or AWS didn't like the terms they were offered, whatever it might be. And so if you now want to, run your VMware Cloud on AWS, with all of the things that you get in it, you completely pay VMware for that. And so now AWS doesn't resell it, doesn't have anything to do with it, and away you go. So that's why. So if you had a single bill before for VMware and all the other stuff that you might be using inside of AWS, S3 storage and serverless and, various databases and analytics engine, all that sort of stuff, that now you're going to have to go to multiple places for that bill.
Got it. Okay. All right, that wraps up the FU. We do welcome comments, clarifications, corrections, whatever else you want to let us know. You can do that at packetpushers.net/FU, and the FU does stand for follow-up. Let's dive into some news. Extreme Networks has announced an LLM-based AI tool called AI Expert, currently available in a tech preview. AI Expert provides a conversational interface that lets you ask questions and get responses using natural language. Initial capabilities include the ability to query and search about 1 million pages worth of Extreme's product documentation and knowledge base articles. So, for example, if you can't remember a specific configuration, you can just ask AI Expert instead of RTFM.
I think they also drew the fact that the AI can also query, did they say 1 million pages of tech support documentation in the press release?
Yeah.
It
was in my notes, briefing notes, yeah.
Yeah, in your notes, that was the thing that's in the top of my mind. Of course, Extreme says seamlessly accessing rich data from hundreds of thousands of source documents translated into several languages. Data will be pulled from a combination of Extreme's public repository, knowledge base, and global TAC documentation. So effectively what they're doing there is using an AI engine that's been trained to read all of the documentation around Extreme so that you can use a generative AI to send queries in, a generative LLM to send queries into another AI, which is trained on the database around Extreme to come back. So you can ask questions, say, how does BGP, VXLAN get configured on this system, whatever, and it will send you, in theory, to the documentation or the knowledge base articles that you need to know.
Yes. Yeah, and we've seen other vendors announce similar capabilities around their own product documentation, which I think is a great use case for an LLM because you want it to be bounded to minimize hallucination. So I think it's a valid use case. And also to be clear, because Extreme also has has had an AI, sort of AI operations product called Extreme IQ Copilot for a while. So just to be clear, AI Expert is sort of an add-on. They say it's going to sit on top of Extreme IQ Copilot to provide that LLM or Gen AI component on top of Copilot. They expect AI Expert to be available by the end of 2024.
Yeah, a little bit of pre-announcement here. So this isn't something that's if you're a big Extreme customer, you might be able to knock on their door and get them to talk to you about it.
Yeah, you can participate in that tech preview if you want.
That's right. But really, we're sort of talking about the end of 2025, which is 9 months away, 6-7 months away.
The end of 2024, yeah.
Yeah. So realistically, this is more of yes, we've got AI. I feel this is as much to the shareholders and to the analysts as it is to the customer per se. Which is fine. Everybody's doing it. Everybody's got to have AI, but it's also worth telling customers that you've got AI because I think everybody's looking for it. I find the Copilot branding a little weird because that's Microsoft Copilot, right? And that's the AI that they put on the back of Office. I wonder if they're using the same Microsoft AI engine and there's some sort of licensing requirement that they use the word Copilot, or is there a clash there? Is that just me, Drew? Am I being weird?
No, I think it's an interesting question because I think this will come up in the next story as well. Vendors are using the Copilot designation. I don't know if Microsoft has trademarked that. I don't know that it would be possible to trademark that. But yes, Copilot is showing up. I think just because it's more metaphorical than maybe a trademark or branded name of this is your friend to help you out while you're flying your operations.
Well, I mean, it's a good term, and Microsoft has made a big deal about Copilot in Microsoft Office.
Yep.
So if I was doing the marketing, I might just ride Microsoft's terminology
rather
than
evangelize it for you. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. And if you go to a customer and say, I've got my Extreme Copilot, they're going to go, gotcha, know exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly.
So that is an angle that it's just interesting to sort of observe these little things and wonder if there's something behind the scenes. I do note that the press release, did you read the press release very closely? It's a bit, what I would call AI slop. Here's one thing for you. A dynamic ecosystem where creativity, collaboration, and cutting-edge technology converge to fuel innovation of early-stage technologies. That's AI there.
I've been reading press releases for years. I feel like that's just sort of a general feature. It's entirely possible it's AI generated, though. So with press releases, it's hard to tell because they do try to strip any trace of humanity out of them. So
yeah, I don't mind being called a dynamic ecosystem with creativity, collaboration, and cutting-edge technology convergence to fuel the innovation of my podcast audience's early-stage technologies. It looks to me like it just got spat out of an AI engine and the person who was doing the marketing didn't do anything to make it human again. It's just interesting to sort of I was reading an article this week and apparently the term that's been coming out to say like, oh, look, you managed to use an LLM and you managed to use the slop that it pushed out. So the term AI slop or just slop is when an AI generates, rubbish text that's really not relevant or hasn't been shepherded into it or edited. Mm-hmm. Really, we're here heading into an era of editing where if you're going to use an LLM to generate marketing copy, you're still involved. You can't just ship it, really.
Yeah, you should just, yeah. Moving on, network automation company Gluware has announced a generative AI tool they're calling Gluware Copilot. There that is again. From the press release, Copilot, quote, enables network operators to better understand network challenges in real time, suggest proactive actions, and automate repetitive tasks. Gluware says Copilot will be available for early field trials in October 2024. So just a heads up, we know everybody's doing this and we are going to do it too.
Yeah. So the initial commitments here are contextual access to help, initial troubleshooting assistance, complex data gathering, deep insight into lifecycle management, which is, things that we've come to expect when people add AI, especially companies like Gluware, Itential, and HPE Aruba. We'll talk a little bit about them a bit further down in the show with their AI offering. Adding AI to these products suddenly means a lot of things that were rather difficult to do and required people to come up with skills over time have now come into a shortcut. But as I said last week, I'm still a little bit concerned about how that changes the role of humans in the system. So do you become the ghost in the machine, deus ex machina, or do you become a key part of it because you've got to be sitting there making sure that the context that's taken out of the AI output is in place? What I do note about the Gluware system is that they mainly focused on using AI in what I think of as out of band. That is, they're not actually configuring anything. They're not doing anything live in the network. They're presaging it, saying eventually we'll be able to dynamically adapt the network and configure the network. But right now, everything that they're announcing is you make a query, the answer comes to the human, and then the human takes the result to go into the network.
Yes.
This sort of keeps me in the view that this is very early in the AI. It's years away. But its value, it does have value, right? Just because AI is years away, it doesn't mean it doesn't have value. That idea of being able to, Extreme or Gluware, being able to query the docs in a natural language is really valuable for people who are onboarding new staff. You don't have to learn Gluware speak to go searching through the manuals, or, you have to know what you're talking about to be able to query, to frame a search most of the time. So.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to be in a period of let's keep the human in the loop because we need to make sure we trust whatever the AI is giving back to us.
But I think also what we're seeing is some fairly mature behavior by the vendors. They're not rushing something to market, Drew. Sometimes we've seen vendors just rush something to market and say, we're billing for this, right? A bit like Tesla's full self-driving. It's not finished. It's not, whatever.
It's definitely not full self-driving.
It's not full, and neither is it entirely self-driving. It's just, partly automated driving. What I do like is that, all of the companies we're talking about today coming to market and saying, we're bringing AI to market and we're going to evolve the product with the customers. So Gluware here is saying, we've got AI. This is our vision for it. And if you're one of our customers, come and talk to us about it. Again, it's a field trial. You can come to them and say, I'm interested in this, and they'll start working with you to put it on. And this seems like a rational way to find out what works and what doesn't. Like if you're talking, there's so much money in AI, like finding people who can write AI and get coders and, buying an LLM or building an LLM, generating your own LLM that's relevant to customers. It's just such a huge undertaking for a lot of these companies. And the idea that you're going to come to market with a fully fledged product is a little bit difficult. But in an era of subscription licensing, they don't have to suddenly come up with version 5 of a product, if that makes sense.
Sure, they can start to roll it in, fold it in more gracefully and gradually. Yep.
So maybe there's a win there for subscription pricing. I don't know. But this way, this rational, slow, getting customers on board, but doing it in public so that people can see what's happening and all that sort of stuff strikes me as a very mature, very stable, progressive way to get things to market. And that there are weaknesses in that model for sure, but it certainly de-risks the vendor for product changes, but it also de-risks the customer because you're not suddenly getting something foisted on you and the salesman's knocking down your door going, I've got this great new product, and you're looking at them like they're insane monkeys just selling something that nobody could ever want. So two sides of that coin.
Yeah. There's definitely, to me, a feeling of AI hype. It is everywhere. It's showing up everywhere. And the question is, again, down to execution. So we'll see how it goes. Moving on, Cisco's announced a new on-prem virtual appliance for AppDynamics. AppDynamics is an observability and troubleshooting product for applications. The new virtual appliance includes, quote, AI-powered intelligence for anomaly detection and root cause analysis, application security, and SAP monitoring. Cisco's also announced licensing changes for AppDynamics to make it easier for customers to move from on-prem AppDynamics to the SaaS version.
Yeah, so pretty straightforward. AppDynamics, of course, was a $5 billion acquisition for Cisco quite some time ago. To some extent, it overlaps with Splunk. It's not clear to me where the differential is between what Splunk does and what AppDynamics does, although Splunk is now being repositioned as a security product mostly, and less of a application dynamics or application stuff like that. And so what Cisco is saying here is that I think what they're saying is customers want this on-prem. They don't want it to be a subscription. They want it self-hosted and they want to feed the data in locally. Now, if you're moving vast amounts of data around and your application is in-house and you're saying, oh, no, if Cisco says it's all got to be SaaS, you've got to, shuffle all that data up into the public cloud. That gets expensive, really expensive. And also, bandwidth, internet, blah, blah, blah. So in this case, I think Cisco is here listening to customers and putting products out that customers, or at least some customers, are saying they want. And Cisco's got the time and the resources. It's coming late to this market. In that sense, it's not pivoting AppDynamics at speed. And they're saying here a new licensing model provides optionality for customers to choose between self-hosted and support them through the transition from self-hosted to SaaS when the time is right for their business. In other words, they're not giving up on SaaS, Drew. They're just saying, we'll give you a product if that's what you really want.
Yeah, not a surprise. I mean, I think AppDynamics and Splunk are very different in that AppDynamics is very much inside your applications, monitoring all of the different elements, software elements, and projects and packages and libraries inside those applications, looking at system calls and so on to help you identify and hopefully fix problems within the application, whereas Splunk is more about log analysis. So different things. But yes, and Cisco, definitely we've heard lots of complaints about its licensing, and maybe customers are saying, don't need everything in the cloud. Some stuff I want to keep on-prem. So Cisco will help you there. Yeah,
at least in this particular business unit at the very least. But it's also signs that Cisco is starting to roll out its AI strategy.
Yeah.
And that's mainly why I picked this one out, because I have been pointing out that Cisco doesn't seem to have a lot of AI around the place. And this is possibly one of the first, or one of the, there's probably been a few announcements, but we don't see them all. So this is one of them, and it's in the AppDynamics space. So Cisco must be getting on board with AI, I think, in places at least.
Yeah, for sure. Next story, and I think this might be the last one where we say AI, but don't hold me to that. HPE Aruba Networking has announced new AI-driven capabilities to identify IoT devices on the network via its Aruba Central platform. HPE says Central can better discover and classify IoT devices and alert administrators about anomalous behavior of these devices. They've made a couple of other announcements, including the addition of next-gen firewalling capabilities to its SSE portfolio, and debuting a kind of SASE Lite option for customers of its Edge Connect SD-WAN, so you can have SD-WAN direct the traffic to HPE's SSE, which is cloud-based security, and just use the secure gateway part of the SSE, sort of a way to help onboard customers gently into more of a SASE model.
Yeah, so I think as best I can to decode this announcement, because it does feel to me like it wanders around a little bit and some of the statements sort of intersect a little bit. So it took me a little while. I think what they're saying here is they're starting to use AI to do fingerprinting of devices, which seems entirely reasonable.
Yep.
Whereas before they would have had to do it via some sort of a whitelisting or, various rules-based stuff. Using an AI to do that does make sense, provided you can do it at a higher level of accuracy and you don't have any hallucinations coming out from the engine. But also this small announcement going large over time. So they're not saying, we've got AI, we're bringing it in, we're adding comprehensive AI-powered observable security and behavioral analytics via our HPE Aruba Networking Central. That's the SaaS service in the cloud. And then it says HPE will introduce, again, not today, Drew, it's a future thing, new AI-powered security observability and monitoring features to help address IoT security risks. So again, if you're looking at IoT security, you actually want an AI to be proactively looking for stuff 24/7, coming up with new threats and identifying them for you pretty quickly. There was one thing that I thought, John Green, who is a HP Aruba Networking Chief Security Officer, was quoted in the piece as saying, generative AI and evolving threats are prompting security teams to rely on a new tool in the zero trust security arsenal of the network. In one sense, you expect the Chief Security Officer of HPE Aruba Networking to say that the network is the most important point of a zero trust policy. But I actually think this is true. I think that for a lot of people, we always put up perimeters when the thing that we're trying to protect is not easily identifiable or where the security risk is easily quantifiable. And so the thing that you can do straight away is put a perimeter in the network while you work out how to bring the security down inside of the AI engine itself. And that's not possible at this point. And that's why I think AI firewalls there's going to be a lot. I think we'll have shows coming up where every other product announcement is an AI firewall. So they'd say here, as an example of what they're using AI for, HPE Aruba Networking uses AI ops and machine learning models to intelligently hibernate APs during periods of low activity, eliminating potential entry points for malicious activity and reducing the attack surface. Well, there's power savings there as well, turning off units. Because a lot of times, like if you've got like a school or a hospital and you've got peak times and you have all of these APs on to handle the density, but in quiet times, you could shut off half of the Wi-Fi because you don't need to cover the density. You don't need to have APs every 15 meters. Maybe an AP every 45 meters is enough or something like that.
Right.
So I think there's a few things going on there. That sort of change it. And I think AI does make sense. And HPE Aruba Networking is really going to be quite sophisticated. And of course, when Juniper gets on board, I think they're going to really have something that they can put together to be a serious player in the networking space.
Yeah, I think I was at the RSA conference this week and talked to a lot of IoT and OT security folks. And one thing that came up repeatedly is that I don't know that you necessarily need AI and machine learning to handle anomalous behavior with IoT devices, because typically these devices do just a handful of things. It's not like a human being or something else where they do all kinds of things. Like a security camera should only be talking to this, storage thing. And if it tries to do something else, that's a problem. That kind of anomaly detection, you don't really need AI or ML for. So I think this is just a little bit of we need to sort of sprinkle the AI fairy dust on everything. Maybe it's useful more in the device identity and fingerprinting, because you can't put agents on these things. So maybe you need to, watch traffic and then try to make a determination about what this device is. But I feel like for the anomaly detection part, you don't need an AI for that when you're talking IoT.
No, you don't. If you've got strict control over what gets connected to your network, no, you don't, right?
Yeah.
But that is, in many cases, a significant number of networks, they don't get control. The security team doesn't get to control what gets connected to the network. Everything just gets connected.
Sure.
Schools, colleges, campuses, universities, some hospitals, because you have private practices inside of a bigger, so there's a lot going on, and so if you've got this much more messy, realistic people just connecting, speakers, internet connected or Bluetooth speakers or Wi-Fi speakers to the network, hoping to do whatever. That's the sort of stuff that, people want. And maybe AI can help you meet that need instead of being the computer person who just says no to everything.
Mm-hmm. I guess that's a valid point. Yeah. All right, a quick break to tell you about our sponsor, iTential. You need a network automation system that's not fragile. Anyone in your org should be able to use it and leverage the automation work you've already done. iTential gives you all of this. With iTential, you'll be able to run your script safely as a workflow that integrates with your change management, your IPAM, monitoring, ticket systems, and anything else that you need. iTential doesn't just save you CLI time. It touches everything that needs updating and testing when you make a network change. And iTential is low code. You don't have to be a software developer to use it. Whether you're just getting started with network automation or you're deep down the rabbit hole with GitOps and pipelines, iTential can help. Automate from ticket creation to ticket closure with iTential. You can find out more at itential.com/packetpushers. That's itential.com/packetpushers. We thank iTential for being a sponsor.
Yeah, iTential is one of those companies that it's a platform.
Yeah.
And I am increasingly a fan of buy a platform, don't build one. That wheel doesn't need reinventing, and iTential is one of those platforms where, do you really want to have to spend months writing, Terraform, Ansible? Somebody gave me a great joke today. They said, what happens if you get Terraform and Ansible together? And the answer is terrible. Which I thought was pretty good. So yeah, I'm a big fan of these platforms compared to all the other alternatives. It's like, democracy is the worst form of government except compared to all the others. And I think that buying one of these platforms instead of building something is probably the smarter move for most people, most companies.
Yeah. All right, back to the news. Akamai is spending $450 million to acquire an API security startup called No Name. No Name provides a discovery tool to help companies find APIs in use, find dormant and zombie APIs or forgotten and neglected domains. No Name can also look for misconfigurations and provide runtime protection of those APIs.
API security is an odd thing. It's an extension of reverse proxies from years gone by, but as APIs got to become primary technology, in fact, there's whole companies who just exist to provide an API that's their whole deliverable. Mm-hmm. And the external, and when you get to that level of criticality or that level of importance, external security controls become important and they're almost like a requirement. You need something that's not connected to the primary product to make sure that it's not gone off the rails. And APIs these days are much more complicated. It's not enough to just filter on malform HTTP requests or pattern searches in the payload. You need much more complex analysis. So given that companies like Akamai have massive content engines that are already being used to protect APIs against DDoS, then adding a firewall-like security product is a very viable lateral product move that they can just go out and knock on the doors of their existing customer base and say, you should give us more money for this new thing since you're already using APIs. Why not protect your API? That makes sense to me.
Yeah, APIs are designed to connect and exchange information with third parties. So, and like any other asset, you could lose track of them. They can be misconfigured. You can run into authentication on authorization problems. So yeah, I agree. API security is a growing area. There's also the second API security company that Akamai has bought in 2023. They bought one called Neosec. So apparently they are finding fruitful ground here.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that they can sell adjacent to their core business product of a content delivery network. They've gone through that, we're going to compete with Cloudflare and become a scripting, we hold a serverless networking platform. And
yeah, they've got WAFs
so
and all
on
that too, yeah. Mm-hmm.
WAFs and all that sort of stuff. So this seems to be very much adjacent and makes quite a lot of sense. This time it's just specifically, tuned for API security, and there's value in that. You don't want to have to go around and I remember doing this with F5s and various other load balancers back in the day where we would write hundreds and hundreds of lines of validation code for this sort of thing. And somebody else can do that much more better than I can. So.
Yes. All right, moving on. Whitebox maker Drivenets has announced support for Broadcom's Qumran 2C plus ASICs for use cases such as service provider edge networks and mobile backhaul.
Yeah, Drivenets, of course, has an architecture that's different to most other vendors. They're one of the last vendors doing something actually genuinely different. When you put its network operating system on a group of switches, usually in a Clo fabric, they come together as a cluster. So it takes a bunch of 1RU, 2RU boxes, switches and routers and turns them into a single unified router. We've talked about them before. They've been a sponsor on the show, of course. In this case, what they're saying is this is the new Broadcom Qumran 2C plus ASIC. The unique thing about the Qumran is that it's unlike many of Broadcom's other chipsets, which are often built into Clo fabrics inside of a single switch to get the capacity. The Qumran supports 40 ports of 100 gigabits per second and 8 ports of 400 gigabits per second, so 7.2 terabits per second in a 2-rack unit. And so what Drivenets is saying, you can now take these low-cost but high-performance boxes, turn them into something that looks like a chassis-based switch without any of the hassles of a chassis, which is substantial, right? Yep. And away you go.
Yep, link in the show notes if you want to read up on it. We'll move on. In March 2024, Nvidia rolled out 800 gig Ethernet and 800 gig Infiniband hardware. And Greg, you had some thoughts about this that came to mind recently.
Yeah, we talk a lot about Ethernet, and we hear a lot about AI Ethernet. There's a consortium out there trying to build Ethernet into an AI ready, which is a lossless, predictable latency, low jitter, low loss fabric. And all of the Ethernet vendors are very excited about this because the current market is somewhat static. And if they could just get Ethernet to be like Infiniband, then there would be some growth in the market, which has been proving out to be true. But I just was pointing out that 800 gig Infiniband sort of puts Fibre Channel on notice. Drew, could you imagine if all of the Fibre Channel that's out there was suddenly replaced by Infiniband? Because you can run Fibre Channel over Infiniband, right? Quite reliably and quite stably. And in fact, for a long time, that is actually what a lot of customers were doing, was running Ethernet and Fibre Channel over Infiniband, and Infiniband was the primary point. I don't think the vendors are really into that, but it wouldn't surprise me that suddenly we could see people saying, oh, this Fibre Channel's stuck at, 64 gigabits, but I've got 800 gig Infiniband out there. I could get my storage going a hell of a lot faster. Why don't I just move to Infiniband for my storage?
Uh-huh. Yes.
Especially if AI is going to prove out all of the storage engines get Infiniband interfaces to talk to the AI clusters, and if you have capacity. And Infiniband is approximately similar to Ethernet, by the way. It's not using entirely custom silicon as Nvidia has shown. They use the same silicon and the same SFPs for Infiniband as they do for Ethernet. So it's not like a massive change here at the physical layer. It's mostly just a software change.
Yeah. Well, Fibre Channel, something to aspire to.
Well, Fibre Channel's a $10 to $15 billion a year market.
Right.
So,
it's nothing to sneeze at. So
Marvell and Broadcom have got that market pretty much cornered. And there's money there. And if you could say, well, maybe we should go in and replace all that Fibre Channel with Infiniband, somebody might go, because Fibre Channel is not going away, right?
Nope. Nvidia.
I just wouldn't be surprised that, the tail wagging the donkey sort of thing.
Sticking with Nvidia, they've announced that its Bluefield 3 DPU can run the virtual machine version of Palo Alto Networks firewall in 5G environments. Nvidia also says the firewall can perform switching and routing functions. Previously, you could not run switching and routing in the firewall on this DPU. The DPU is also now supporting NAT offloads for 5G environments.
Yeah, so the article talks about the use of Bluefield DPUs to run traffic offload for Palo Alto network security appliances running in virtual machines, right? Now, of course, this is specifically relating to 5G deployments in this case, where the POPs, the 5G towers, what happens at the base of the tower, they're moving away from running custom hardware devices to running sort of standardized x86, Intel, and some ARMs and so forth to be able to run containers and VMs to replace the old custom hardware. So the idea is you'd have commodity hardware and then you just have a bunch of VMs. The challenge is, of course, that silicon acceleration of firewalls, for example, and various other functions was often used. The custom hardware often included SmartNICs or various co-processors. Back in the day, it was SSL encryption processors and so forth. And that's what gave a lot of those custom boxes the ability to scale to the performance needed when doing complex packet functions. So the article, as you say, Drew, points out significant benefits for NAT-based offloads. But I also noted that they're now talking about the use of an layer 3 routed mode in addition to L2 bump in the wire mode. So the previous generation of this, which operated in Bluefield 2s as well, from Palo Alto, was just previously a bump in the wire. Those implementations, bump in the wire, have some problems, and they can cause various problems around HA and a lot of people just don't know how to use firewalls as a bump in the wire. So the ability to say this is a VLAN on the outside with this IP range and then a VLAN on the inside, and you route across the firewall is generally regarded as gooder. It's not necessarily better, it's just gooder because of operational issues. And so now they're able to do that in the Bluefield because it's got more, I'm guessing, because it's got more resources and so forth. So that's the sort of thing that you're looking at. You're actually almost seeing a full Palo Alto firewall in a virtual machine using the DPU for acceleration. And Drew, I love me some DPUs. I'm still bullish on them.
You do. That's right. Maybe we should have a DPU podcast for you.
Does this prove out my point? No, but it is a step in the right direction. I'm going to take it.
Take it.
I'm going to take it.
Take the win.
Yeah,
Take the win.
I am the bear. I called it.
All right, our last story for the day. Dell says it's going to start tracking employee attendance to ensure that hybrid workers are coming to the office a minimum of 39 days per quarter, which works out to about 3 days per week. That's according to a story in the Register. Tracking mechanisms will include badge swipe tracking and VPN use. Dell also says it's going to use a color-coded ranking system to report employee attendance to managers. Color codes for attendance ranking from best to worst are blue, green, yellow, and red. It feels like we're back in grade school with this.
This sounds like a bit retro, doesn't it? It really sounds like something that would come out of Texas, to be fair. The Texas is, you can have all the freedoms you want as long as they're the freedoms I let you have, which is something I sort of notice about a lot of companies in Texas. I'm not 100% sure whether this is a good idea or a bad idea. I mean, companies are free. You're an employee, you work for the company, you either follow it or you don't. And if you have choices, maybe you get to choose to exercise those. I think the flip side here, Drew, is if you report attendance to your manager and you're showing up as red because you're actually not coming into the office, does anyone care if your manager doesn't?
Well, I guess that's part of the issue. I guess the other part of the issue is, I guess I feel like we know what employees want is flexibility, is hybrid work. We've also demonstrated it doesn't have a negative productivity impact on organizations, and yet organizations still seem to be insisting on getting employees back in the office. And this just feels kind of punitive and childish, and maybe that's the point. Maybe they just want people to leave. I don't know. But yeah. Getting your color-coded grade every month or quarter and having to sit down with your manager.
Is that one of those companies who said if you're a remote worker, you'll no longer be in line for pay rises and promotions or something like that?
They did say that if you designate that you want to be hybrid, you will risk promotion and advancement, and you will increase your chances of being laid off when layoffs come. So Dell is definitely not down with hybrid work. It
does feel like something that reminds me of EMC. Do you remember EMC Corp back in the day? And they used to treat their people fairly badly. they were based in Boston simply because that was where they could have non-competes. I was once told by somebody that was why EMC was based in Boston, because the non-competes were ironclad there. And also because there was nowhere else for the employees to go. So if you worked at EMC in Boston, you had a non-compete and there was nowhere else to work for in that business. And that's why it was there. I think that was a bit of folklore, but it did sound like something that the sort of that leadership, and keeping in mind that Dell has still got a lot of EMC or ex-EMC executives who migrated into senior roles in Dell. It does feel like something that those people would do. But it does sound retro. It doesn't sound at all like the companies who do have remote working and hybrid work, fairly free-flowing and let the teams sort their own thing out, are generally reporting greater productivity than those who don't. So it does ask the question why Dell feels like their business is different to everybody else's and what makes them unique. I'd be interested to see something about that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Dell is welcome to run its company the way it wants. Just if you're thinking about work there, understand this is the culture you will be getting into. All right, links in the show notes as always. If you want to read up on it yourself, you're welcome to. That wraps up the show. We don't have a tech bite, so Greg, where can folks get more from you if they want to connect online?
I am reducing my exposure to Twitter again. I've been spending less time there, and I'm also doing less on LinkedIn. It still creeps me out. But if you want to find me or chat to me or reach out, send us the FU at packetpushers.net/follow-up. Of course, as always, thanks for fact-checking me. It's always important to get things right eventually, and we always put the FU right up the front of the show so that your follow-up gets the primary point on the show.
If you're not going to be on LinkedIn, how will you be a thought leader?
Well, I am a thought emperor. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I forgot. Yes,
I am so far beyond that.
You're above LinkedIn.
I just don't need to be there. That's it.
I'm Drew Conry Murray. I am on LinkedIn. I'm also on Blue Sky and Mastodon if you want to go over there, and I'm blogging regularly on packetpushers.net. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Network Break. If you like the show, leave us a recommendation on Apple Podcasts. That'd be great. Or tell a friend. As always, thanks for listening.